Hey everybody, Vanguard here. Yeah, gonna take you through a new deck tech. I'm calling it aggro plants right now, but there aren't a lot of plants. That's the name I started with. Deck has evolved over time. Has a really good win rate on ladder right now. I think I'm something like 32 and 4 with this deck or something like that across two different accounts. Um, it has not lost very many games. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I lost two today. So it's probably closer to like 32 and 6. Still, strong win rate above 80%. If I did that math right there in my head. And not a ton of rares in this thing. Actually, that's not true. There are a decent number of rares, but it's fun. This is aggressive aggro deck that I think fits my criteria of an aggro deck specifically because like is going to beat a one-turn heal deck, and that's what I like. So let's go through the creatures. We're not going to go exactly in order here. Let's go with the one drops first. You're going to start in black. So the idea here is we're going to start with a zombie opener. So we've got our zombie legionnaire. Pretty standard, one drop zombie, 2/2. It's going to do a lot of damage, but it's pretty slow. On the two drop side, we're running three two-drop creatures. The first one is a Abhorrent Ghoul. I got a few of them in here. I think in this version of the list I have three. You could possibly play it with two. You could also go up to four. Does a lot of damage. A 3/3 body is hard to deal with, and the lose 3 life drawback is not a huge deal because if you get into a situation where that matters, you've likely lost the game already. The other turn 2 creatures, Death Curse Shaman. We are playing Enoch, and we're playing a decent number of sacrifice effects. This is, in some ways, just a -2 to your opponent, which is almost as good as a Fireball or a Succubus. And it's a creature that can die in the early game, which will trigger your Insatiable Ghoul. And it just enables a lot of favorable trades and is really good with the Enoch hero power. We're playing 4 of them. I think that's a 4 must-have. We're also playing 4 Infected Survivor. I also think this is a must-have 4 of. Infected Survivor is just like really weird for controller mid-range decks to deal with. A lot of the time you think like, oh, I'm not going to kill this thing because I don't want to take damage to the face from it. But then you end up in a situation where you're in the late game, you're down to not very much health, and you're facing an Infected Survivor with a board of Flesh Sculptors on it, and then you're just kind of in big trouble. So definite 4 of, really good in this deck. We're also playing 4 Insatiable Ghoul. This isn't a straight-up zombie deck, and we're not going to play Duke Hartsford, despite the card back. So the drawback of Insatiable Ghoul, it's not a huge deal, and a big 3/4 body is just difficult for folks to deal with, and you're going to hit it on curve almost all the time. Rest of the creatures. So ideally you're going just a corruption level up to 3 mana, and then at 3 mana you're going to switch to a Trigon level. Your Trigon level, we'll talk about that I guess, will be a blue-green Trigon level. We're playing blue and green in this deck. I think that it works almost just as well with blue and gold. In fact, it might even be better with blue and gold. I'm bringing you the blue-green version because that's the version I started with here, but I think the blue-gold version is worth testing out. And then once you get to 3 mana, 2 levels, or 4 mana, 2 levels, you got a whole set of creatures that you can play. Harbinger is the first one. Even though this guy isn't a demon anymore, that's not a big deal in this deck. And what he brings to the table is 4/6 in terms of stats, and spread across 3 bodies, and 2 of those bodies are 3 speed, which is a huge deal in a zombies deck. It enables a ton of favorable trades, and Harbinger allows you to establish a board that you can then build off of with Timea. So Timea is an all-star in this deck. She's the only reason you're playing blue, because you're going to go really wide, and you need some card draw. The main problem with zombies most of the time is like, where does your card draw come from? Timea generates it for you. You're playing 4 of her, and you're most of the time, if you can get the cards through, or I guess the Might Emblems through, meaning if you have an opportunity to put a Timea down and hit with 2 Might Emblems to your opponent's face, you should almost always take that opportunity because then Timea is essentially a 3/4 in terms of stats, deal 2 damage at least to your opponent, and draw 2 cards. It's just an incredible card. So you want to play 4 of her, and you want to try to hit her on curve whenever possible. The other options that we have at 3 mana are the Spore Shepherd, which is where the initial name for aggro plants came from. The idea of the Spore Shepherd is it's going to make you sacrifice some of your creatures, and we're playing a whole bunch of creatures that we don't mind sacrificing, particularly like an Infected Survivor or Death Curse Shaman. Sometimes it's good to sacrifice those creatures, and when we do, we're going to get a bigger board. Has the drawback of Tainted, but the 2/4 body is really, really solid. It is, as a caution, absolutely terrible against Mono Corruption. You should not put it on the field against Mono C because it will get haunted, and the haunt triggers not just on your turn, but on both players' turns. It'll generate 4 souls per turn for your opponent. So those are our options at 3 mana spot. We also have Flesh Sculptor. Even though it's a 2 mana, 2 level card, most of the time you're going to try to play 2 of these at once. And you're going to save them for the decks that you feel like have really strong board clears, or where they're just going to try to contest on board, but they're a little bit slower than you, and you want to get really wide. Most of the time, Flesh Sculptor it's not like the must-have card in this deck, but it will be a standout in a lot of matchups. You don't want to get this haunted either, though, although it's not as terrible if it is. But most of the time, you're not playing it on curve. You're playing it on like turn 4 or 5 or 6. The other creatures that we got in this version, I have multiple versions. I got a version with Succubus. This version is playing Haldiri Rider. It's probably not worth playing Haldiri Rider once I post this deck tech, and if you're making this deck, stick something else in there. But when I was playing this on ladder and people didn't know what to expect, people don't really expect Haldiri Rider. It's a nice way to push through the final 3 damage if you need it, or just to like get a favorable trade on the board. The real problem with Haldiri Rider is that the 2 health there is just absolutely terrible. You need more than 2 health. It dies to fumes, it dies to suffocate. I mean, it would at 3 health as well, but 2 is just really quite bad. So those are our creatures. You are playing a lot, 34 of them, 35 creatures. It's a lot of creatures. This is straight up aggro list. Now let's look at the spells. So Noxious Fumes is the first one. You play it on curve against Rage Rush. It's necessary to hold the board for you, and it enables a lot of favorable traits. It's a great card. I think you should play 4 of them in this deck. Haunt is more flexible. I like 2 of them because in the matchup against Mono Corruption, you're going to need a haunt. You want to haunt Harpies because we're playing a lot of 1-level creatures, in case you haven't noticed. You're going to want to haunt Tombs, although most of the time Tombs is going to be slow to be an issue. And if your opponent slaps down a haunt, you're going to want to haunt their haunt. It's just a pain in the neck to play against, and I think 2 of them is the right call. However, you could go lower on haunt and play something like, I've got other versions of the list here that play the shrine that makes all your opponent's creatures slower, Hands from Beyond. You might want to throw one of those in there. You could even throw a Parallel Evolution in there with the number of kind of like token creatures that you're running, particularly in Chained Souls. But right now, there are only 6 spells: Noxious Fumes, Haunt, and then of course Trigon. But as a note, you can't play Trigon for the spell effect because we're not in gold right now. And then for shrines, we're playing a whole bunch of Corruption Shrines, 61 cards, 20 shrines total, so 14 Corruption Shrines, and 2 Mausoleums. Why 14 Corruption Shrines? Why 20 shrines overall? My main thought here is that you're going to try to DO every turn because you're looking for Trigon, and then when you're not finding Trigon, you're looking for Mausoleum a lot of the time. And given that you have 6 cards that don't draw, and a Misty Oak early in the game in particular can just be killer. I think if you prefer to go down to 19 and run 1 fewer shrine, you could. I like it at 20. Mausoleum is our only skill shrine because we're only playing 2 levels. You could run Zombify, but I haven't found it to be worthwhile. Like, most of the time, Zombify is just another 1-drop creature. You kind of really need to play it twice, in my opinion, to have it really, really be worth your time. And the additional zombie in this deck is just not playing a very grindy game. Mausoleum, however, enables a whole bunch of trades and a whole bunch of tempo. And look how many 1 aspect creatures you're playing. That's 4, 7, 11, 15, 19, 21. You're playing 21 1-aspect creatures. So if you can find the Mausoleum, almost a third of the cards in your deck are going to trigger it. So you should be able to get a trigger or set up a trigger at least twice in a game. If you get it twice, that's huge value. Even if you just get it once, it's kind of like a Noxious Fumes that you play a little situationally. It's a little bit worse on the -1/-1, but the -1 speed can be huge for pushing final damage through. There are other cards that you could consider. I actually think the biggest thing that you could consider with this deck is not playing it in green at all, getting rid of the Spore Shepherd and the Haldiri Rider, playing it in gold or order, and running Cavalry Field Captain, and possibly Companion of the Heavens, or even the 4/6 guy. But I think I like it better in green just because the Haldiri can push some damage through, and in particular matchups, the Spore Shepherd makes it nearly impossible for your opponent to win. It's a very situational card, that's why we're only running 2 of them, but I think it's situational enough that that it's better than going CFC, even though CFC just is universally really good. And the reason Spore Shepherd can be so powerful is because Tameya's tokens on the Shooting Sprouts make them all 4/3s, and in the Spore Shepherd alone makes them 2/1s. Tameya's tokens make them 4/3s. And Enoch's Hero Power also turns them into a 4/3 if you get them down. So they're pretty big and bad and nasty. Overall game plan, you're going to play a lot of creatures. You're going to try to set up a good curve. And then hopefully around the turn 5, 6, 7, you can be able to hit a big Enoch Hero Power and either put the game out of reach, just close it out right then, or get it so close to being over that that you win. The matchups, I haven't found a universally bad matchup. Rage Rush can be pretty tough because you're playing so many tainted creatures. However, if you can get one of these 2/4s on the board, either the Spore Shepherd or the Harbinger or even the Ghoul, they do a lot of work for you because Rage struggles to remove those. But Rage Rush can be a little bit difficult. Priests can also be difficult. You don't have a lot of direct removal for their angelic temples. If you can haunt a temple, then the temple ends up being worse than if they didn't have anything. But if you can't haunt the temple, then you've got to you struggle a little bit. And then Mono Corruption really depends. Like if they're able to get a lot of harpies down, you're in trouble. If they get a harpy down but you deal with it, or they get a harpy down but you haunt it, then you're usually in good shape. So it's a little bit of a toss-up. But I did play Laurenthiel twice today with him on Mono C and me on this deck, and I won both of those matchups, and Laurenthiel's a heck of a Mono C player, so it's not necessarily a bad matchup. In terms of great matchups, you should not lose a game to one-turn heal. I mean, famous last words, I'm going to like queue in a second and end up losing a game to one-turn heal, but just like with the size of the bodies you're putting on the board, the number of creatures you're putting on the board, and the presence of Flesh Sculptors and Enoch's Hero Power, like you could possibly win against one-turn heal with life gain, but almost certainly you should be beating them down. Alright, so that's the deck. As I said, it's got a really strong win rate. I've been playing it across 2 accounts. We just had Decay, so these accounts are a little bit lower. I think if I had just been playing it on one account, it'd likely be challenging for the #1 rank. I've been trying to get both of my accounts up to #1 and #2. But I feel like 3-4 right now, both playing a version of this deck, isn't so bad. Let's see if we can get a ranked game, and you can see how this thing runs. In terms of just talking through a little bit of the other deck inclusions, Succubus is pretty good as a finisher if you can get your opponent down to 3. I have a version of this in like probably more than half of my games I played using Succubus. So I'm not convinced that it's better to have Haldiri Rider than Succubus. I think it's kind of like pick your preference on that front. Succubus guarantees the damage, but you go down a card to play it because you have to go up an extra level, and the only reason you're going up the extra level is for the Succubus. In terms of other cards that work well, I mean, the Hands from Beyond can be really, really annoying to your opponent if you find a chance to play it, particularly if they're trying to contest your board. I'm trying to think what else I've considered for this deck. I don't think that you want to run Consume or Word of Pain or even Suffocate, although you could run like a one-off Suffocate because a lot of your creatures are out of Suffocate range. But by and large, I think that the deck is going to work best if you pick a game plan and just go with that game plan. Like, we're attacking face, let's do it. We don't seem to be getting a ranked game here. Let's see if anybody's in the friendly queue. But I think that's an option, the Suffocate. And then as I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest option for this deck is, well, there are two. One is you go gold for your Trigon level. You play blue, gold, black, and then you can play Cavalry Field Captain. And Cavalry Field Captain is a heck of a card. The only thing with Cavalry Field Captain, I guess it gives you more options on your curve, which is not a bad thing at all. So you could consider the CFC. If you go CFC, though, you don't get the Spore Shepherd, you don't get the Haldiri Riders. You would probably want to play Succubus in that version. Maybe not. I think the other option, particularly for Conquest, is just don't play Trigon at all. Stick with Wisdom and just play Wisdom and Corruption. And then you just need to find 6 cards to take the place of the Spore Shepherd and the actually only 4 in the version I just showed you, to take the place of the Spore Shepherd and the Haldiri Rider. Did we get a game? Wonderful. So we got a game here. This is against Crazy Kirby. We're playing a friendly. I think Crazy Kirby is a new player. I've seen Crazy Kirby a little bit on the Discord. I wonder if that's Jotto's deck that we put up on Spellweaver DB. So do we want to keep this hand? Yeah, definitely. So with running as many shrines as we are, sometimes we run into this situation where we get a lot of shrines, but I'm going to keep this hand because, as you can see, the curve is there. So zombies, infected survivor, and then we can spark into Harbinger, and that's going to give us 1, 2, we're going to draw a lot of cards before that's all done. And in drawing a lot of cards, hopefully we get a better curve. So we're going to DO away all but one of the Trigons, because you're only ever going to play 1 Trigon per game. And we're looking for, possibly, the Mausoleum Shrine. But we don't need it yet, and you're never going to play Mausoleum until you actually need it. So there's the Mausoleum. We've got the Mausoleum. So now we've got all the shrines that we need for our setup. So we're just going to keep going face here. We haven't yet identified what deck this is. This could be Jotto's rank 1 deck, which I actually haven't played against with this list, which would run a lot of incarnates. It could be... it could just be standard Wisdom Dominion control. If it's standard Wisdom Dominion control, I feel like we're very favored. That, however, is a problem for us. So, oh cool, we drew into the Insatiable Ghoul. So we're going to need to kill the mutant. Obviously that mutant's going to be an issue for us. So we're going to use Mausoleum to do it, and the Spark. So we'll go Spark, and we're going to use the Ghoul on the mutant. And then of our creatures, it does matter. We want to use the summoned one as the trade, because in the event that we draw a Flesh Sculptor later, we're going to want to have more non-summoned creatures on the board. So we're going to get at least 1 good turn off of the Insatiable Ghoul, and that would be the only reason to trade the non-summoned creature, is if we felt like we needed 2 things in the graveyard. Hopefully we're not going to run into a Helm here. As far as I know, Jotto's version only runs 1 Helm. And there's the Power Surge. So he's really ramping. I think this is Jotto's deck. We are getting Shrine Flooded a lot here. I think that in this situation we have to attack because Cataclysm is certainly coming soon, perhaps next turn. And we don't have any Flesh Sculptors to slap down on the board. So he'll trade there. We've gotten 6 damage through. I think we do need to force the Cataclysm if he has it. So we'll play that, and if he has Cata, he's got to play it here. And then we have a lot of creatures that'll allow us to build up a board. I guess he doesn't have to play Cata here, but if he doesn't, he's in some trouble. I haven't DO'd away the Mausoleum yet, just because we've got a hand of mainly shrines at the moment. Does he have Cataclysm? He has 4 cards, and he's got 3 in his deck if he is running Jotto's version. He's going to need it here. I think. Otherwise, next turn we're going to be doing 6, 7, 8, 9. We're probably doing 9 to the face next turn if he doesn't have a Cataclysm. Although he might have some creatures. Johto's version has creatures. Okay, so he's got the Helm. I think what we'll do, the Helm is interesting, because Helm means really takes away 4 damage that we could have done, but oh, Timea is great for us. Cool. So that's exactly what we want in this situation. We'll hold the Haldiri Rider. No need to swift it through right now. He could be holding Assassinates, but I don't remember if Johto's playing Assassinate in his deck. And either way, we gotta risk it. There's just no benefit to not risking it. So ideally, we're doing 4 damage here and drawing 2 cards. Yep. We don't attack with the zombie because it's just a trade for no reason. We could have forced him to make a decision, like, do we have fumes in hand? Which actually we do now, but I don't think it's worth it. We're going to hold here. Now we're at 10. He needs Cataclysm this turn. If he doesn't, we're going to try to Haldiri Rider, and we probably won't drop the Sculptor yet. I kind of want to see if I can get 2 Sculptors on the board. Let's see what his plan is, though. Yeah, this is absolutely Johto's deck. Yep. So he's down to 1 card now. Do we have lethal? No. We can push through 8 damage next turn, but that's not enough for lethal. He should get an Enchained Soul here. So we're going to have a lot of options. Yeah, he gets the Enchained Soul. I think that's the right decision. Will he sacrifice it to draw a card, or will he keep it as a blocker? I don't know that Johto has any heal in this deck. Okay. We're going to go just mana to see what we draw, because we don't have any reason to play the Mausoleum. And so we'll also just Dio the Mausoleum, because we're never going to play that. Good, we've got Shrines. Okay, so at this point we're starting to look for lethal, although we can only press through damage with... We really don't have anything that we can press through damage with, so there's no chance we get lethal here. Our options on the table are Spore Shepherd into... Yeah, so we can play the Abhorrent... Sorry, not Spore Shepherd, I don't have that. Abhorrent Ghoul with the Rune and kill the Enchained Soul. That then sets up some interesting trades for us because we get Timea on probably the Mutant. Yeah, we get Timea on the Mutant. But I also kind of want to get the Flesh Sculptor on the board, so we can do all of that. Let's do that then. I'm not convinced this is correct, but it puts him in a situation where he's pretty close to needing to, and we'll trade off the Mutant. Puts him in a position where he's pretty close to needing Cataclysm. So we'll go there and kill that. We are not concerned about our life total at all at this point. And then I'm gonna go. We're gonna go Flesh Sculptor on the board. I mean, the other option is we could clear completely. Is that worthwhile, though? No, I think we want the Sculptor. So Sculptor here, Enchained Soul here, to the face there. So now he's down to 8. I think that his only heal is off the Enchained Souls that he has. So we're going to do that because we can, and it's nice to have the 1 extra health. So now we're in a situation where, and I'm going to put the Flesh Sculptor backline. No, front line, because he's going to go down 1, so he can still get a Militant Miner. But when he's at 8 health, we want to threaten as much damage as possible. So I think front line is the right call. He now basically has the option to do his hero power, which if he guesses if he gets a Harbinger, could save him. No, because he won't lose life. So he won't get and he resigns. Cool. So that's the deck. We didn't get to see the hero power coming through, but there you have it. That is aggro plants. Hopefully you got a sense of it. We get a foil card. We get another card. Cool beans. Thanks for watching, team. And as always, when in doubt, attack face.